The 12 words from Coco Gauff that brought the tennis world to its knees. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Baseline, your only destination for the seismic, uncensored, and game-changing stories from the crossroads of sports and fame. Forget everything you thought you knew about drama. Erase every on-court meltdown you've ever witnessed. Whatever you are doing, drop it now. Because the firestorm we just saw unfold, a moment forged between a legend in tears and a defiant young queen, didn't just break the internet. It tore the very soul from professional tennis. For an entire generation, Roger Federer has been the living definition of grace. The Swiss maestro, a man who never sweats, never shouts, and never ever cracks his immaculate veneer of neutrality. He was the ultimate statesman of the ATP, the one who could disarm a rival with a handshake and mask agony with a smile. But that statesman vanished today. In his place, a furious protector arose, a man who surveyed the sport he helped create and finally roared, "No more." And in the eye of this hurricane stands Coco Gauff, the prodigy, anointed the next Serena, only to be devoured by vultures the moment she revealed her humanity. We've all seen the headlines. We've all heard the corrosive whispers. But nothing, not a single word, could have prepared the world for Roger Federer seizing a microphone, his face a thundercloud of fury, his hands trembling with contained rage, to unleash a speech that will echo through history. The way she has been treated is an insult to this entire sport. With those words, time itself seemed to stop. In a stunning break from his trademark reserve, Federer publicly championed Coco Gauff, condemning what he termed a profound injustice poisoning modern tennis. An icy stillness fell over the room. Pens clattered onto tables. Every camera lens tightened, capturing a vision of Federer unseen for 20 years. He pressed on, his voice a low growl that sliced through the hushed air like a blade. What kind of cruelty drives people to malign, to condemn, and to intentionally shatter the spirit of a woman barely in her 20s? A person who came of age under the glare of cameras, shouldering the hopes of a generation while enduring the daily onslaught of media, social networks, and a mercilessly competitive machine. The accusation hung in the air, cold and devastating. But the moment that truly fractured the landscape came seconds later, when Coco Gauff herself stepped into the light. She was not there for tears. She was not there to plead for pity. She was there to seize the narrative. She raised her chin, paused for a heart-stopping beat, then uttered a mere 12 words, a statement so sharp it carved through the hypocrisy of the tennis world like a diamond edge. Today on Beyond the Baseline, we are dissecting it all. We are exposing the complete story behind Federer's volcanic outburst, the relentless pressure that drove Coco to the brink, and those 12 words that have sent tremors through the sport's old guard. We will also analyze the aftershocks, the high-profile split, from Federer's own agency, the firestorm ignited by her comments on American fans, and the battle lines now being drawn for the 2026 season. Strap yourselves in. This is the narrative they tried to bury. To grasp the sheer magnitude of this cataclysm, we must turn back the clock. We must examine the crucible of pressure that has been Coco Gauff's reality since she was just 15 years old. Remember Wimbledon 2019? A teenager vanquishes the great Venus Williams. A new star ignited the heavens. The media anointed her the savior of American tennis, placing a crown on her head before she even held a driver's license. But every crown casts a shadow, and on her back, it painted a target. In recent years, that narrative began to sour. The very architects of her myth became its demolition crew. They nitpicked her forehand, they scrutinized every coaching change. They whispered that her focus was fractured by fame, by fashion, by the demands of her own growing empire. And let's be brutally honest. A toxic undercurrent has always defined the attacks on Coco, a glaring double standard that Federer's defense finally dragged into the light. When other players demolish rackets or unleash tirades at umpires, they are called passionate. Yet Coco is expected to be a flawless automaton, a smiling, eternally grateful machine. This storm had been gathering for months. We saw the first fractures in the facade in late 2025. Recall the seismic split? The news that sent shockwaves through the industry. Coco Gauff was severing ties with Team 8, the very agency founded by Roger Federer himself. Publicly, the statements were diplomatic masterpieces, filled with talk of new chapters and entrepreneurial spirit. Coco launched Coco Gauff Enterprises, determined to captain her own ship, but behind the scenes the rumor mill churned into a frenzy. Was it a bitter separation? Had Federer failed to shield her? Insiders whispered that this was never about the money. It was about protection. It was about a rising star feeling utterly alone, caught in a machine engineered to pulverize athletes into dust. And perhaps, just perhaps, Roger Federer had the devastating realization that the very system he created had ultimately failed her. That profound guilt, that stark awareness, may be the very fuel for his fiery defense today. He is not just defending a player, he's championing a prodigy the game itself has betrayed. This week's firestorm wasn't ignited by a single off-key performance. It was the final straw, a press interrogation staged in the depths of hell. Imagine the arena. Coco is slumped at the table, drained from a brutal defeat, her legendary serve having vanished when she needed it most. The press corps, or the vultures as their critics dub them, bypass questions of strategy. They aim for the soul, questioning her spirit, her worth, her very legend. They challenge her right to success, to her endorsements. It is a public flogging masquerading as a press conference. Typically, the titans of the sport remain aloof. The legendary three mind their own kingdoms. But Federer witnessed this, and a line was crossed. The treatment she has endured, he declared, his voice cutting through the silence, is a stain on the honor of our sport. His words were not merely for the journalists present. They were a missile aimed at the venomous hordes online. He was indicting the pundits who revel in her stumbles. He named the deep injustice a thunderous condemnation from a statesman who normally sidesteps conflict with surgical precision. How, Federer's voice resonated with disbelief, can such cruelty exist? The question hung in the air, demanding a reckoning in an age that pays lip service to the sanctity of an athlete's mental fortitude. Yet we sit idly by as warriors like Coco, like Naomi Osaka, are eviscerated for the crime of being human. Federer's intervention was a shield, forged to deflect the poisoned arrows aimed at Coco. But this is where the narrative shifts. This is what transforms the moment into legend. Coco Gauff required no shield. As she approached the microphone, the world held its breath, anticipating a breakdown. Her tears were familiar to us, the raw, unfiltered expression of a warrior's frustration. We braced for gratitude to Roger, a plea for sympathy, the posture of a victim. She offered nothing of the sort. Onlookers swear the very air in the room grew 10 degrees colder. Her gaze was a weapon, meeting the eyes of every journalist, piercing through the lens of every camera. An unnerving stillness settled over her, a poise so absolute it bordered on menacing. And then, she unleashed the 12 words that would shatter everything. In the ensuing chaos, as PR teams scramble to erase the record, insiders have reconstructed the core of her proclamation. It was not a plea, it was a manifesto. A vow of sovereign independence. I am done seeking your approval. From this day forward, I play for myself. 12 words. Etch them in stone. I am done seeking your approval. From this day forward, I play for myself. Or, as another version whispers through the grapevine, a more defiant blade. You can shatter my silence, but you will never touch my soul. No matter which account is immortalized in history, the message was an amputation. It was the resounding crack of a titan snapping the strings held by those who sought to control her narrative. It was Coco's decree to the media, the cynics, and the world. You have no claim on me. The shockwave was immediate. A hush fell over every locker room. Do you imagine her rivals were unmoved? That Aryna Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, and Elena Rybakina didn't feel a tremor of fear and awe race down their spines? Because a Coco Gauff unleashed, a Coco Gauff indifferent to the world's judgment, is the most formidable force this sport has ever known. This defiant stand connects seamlessly to the fire she ignited at the dawn of 2026. Recall the United Cup mere days ago, where Coco detonated a truth that sent shockwaves through the American fanbase. Questioned about the loyalty of her homeland's supporters, she refused to offer a sanitized lie. She revealed that American fans, when compared to international crowds, were the most fickle in supporting their athletes on foreign soil. The outrage was deafening. The audacity, they cried. The ingratitude. But view her words now, illuminated by the fire of her 12-word declaration. She had already begun to signal the end. She was already revealing that the charade was over. She has finished feigning perfection in the poisonous dynamic with an endlessly demanding public. She laid bare the ugly truth. Elsewhere, flags fly in victory and defeat, but in her home country, adoration is conditional on your latest triumph. Her subsequent statement on X was equally revealing. I was merely answering a question with honesty, she wrote. It was a simple observation. She offered no apology for speaking her truth. Now, with the formidable weight of Federer's endorsement behind her, that truth has ignited a revolution. Consider the Federer factor. Why did the master intervene? Insiders whisper he recognized the signs of a catastrophic burnout on the horizon. He has witnessed it consume others. He understands that if Coco walks away, and make no mistake, she would the sport forfeits its most luminous air. Tennis as an institution cannot survive the loss of Coco Gauff. Her impact on ratings, on sponsorships, on the pure, crackling electricity of the game is seismic. She is an irreplaceable asset, and no one understands the brutal calculus of the tennis business like Federer. His public outcry was a calculated act of preservation, an attempt to purge the venom from the sport's ecosystem. And that phrase, deep injustice, those words were no accident. He was undoubtedly alluding to the disproportionate and brutal scrutiny faced by young, black female athletes, a burden measurably heavier than that carried by their counterparts. In voicing this, Federer, the very embodiment of the establishment, lent his unimpeachable credibility to the silent battles of every athlete who has ever been cast to the margins. This is nothing less than a monumental shift in the culture of the game. Shockwaves from this event are convulsing the world of tennis. Urgent, high-level meetings are reportedly underway at the WTA's command center. Corporate backers are frantically re-evaluating their positions. Media conglomerates are desperately trying to write new rules of engagement with players. And you have to understand why. When a figure like Roger Federer, the very icon of sportsmanship, publicly denounces you, you don't just have a problem, you have a catastrophe. When he unleashes words like cruel and disgusting to condemn the treatment of an athlete, you cannot simply wave it away as an overstatement. This is a man whose entire legacy is built on being the ultimate diplomat, the link between eras, the unwavering voice of reason. For him to detonate with such force means the situation has become utterly untenable. The timing of this entire firestorm is what makes it so utterly gripping. We are on the precipice of the Australian Open, the first major championship of the year, and in a flash, the entire story has been torn up and rewritten. The conversation is no longer about forecasts and potential matchups. It's about the soul-deep rot in the system and how the sport devours its own. Instead of dissecting the mechanics of a serve, we are now forced to confront the psychology of torment and the devastating price of celebrity. Coco Gauff has effectively commandeered the global tennis narrative, and she accomplished it using only 12 words. That is true power. That is influence. That is the mark of someone who grasps that in the modern media circus, raw, unflinching honesty demolishes polished artifice every single time. The reaction across social media platforms has been nothing short of volcanic. Within hours of Federer's proclamation and Gauff's reply, hashtags like Stand with Coco and Federer's Truth were blazing across the globe. Legends from every era of the sport began to add their voices. Billie Jean King sent out a cryptic message about the duty to shield our champions. Martina Navratilova shared a piece on mental health in athletics with the simple command, read this, then read it again. Even Venus Williams, who almost never wades into the sport's daily dramas, endorsed several posts that backed Gauff. The message was unmistakable. The titans of the past are forming a protective wall around the new generation, refusing to allow the media predators to tear another young phenom to pieces. But this is not an echo chamber. The tennis community is not the only one listening. Athletes from entirely different arenas have begun to speak up. NBA giants, NFL legends, and Olympic heroes have all integrated Gauff's 12 words into their own public statements. There is a powerful acknowledgement that her ordeal is not a phenomenon confined to tennis. It illuminates a far greater sickness regarding how we handle young competitors, particularly women and athletes of color. In this age of ceaseless judgment and digital mobs, Coco has, perhaps without intention, become the symbol of a rebellion. Her absolute refusal to buckle under duress, her audacity to speak an unwelcome truth, and her iron will to define victory for herself have struck a chord that resonates far beyond any stadium. So, what does this inferno mean for Coco Gauff's actual ability to play tennis? Because in the end, the game is decided with the swing of a racket and the flight of a ball, not with explosive press conferences and viral hashtags. Pundits have argued for months that Gauff's most significant barrier was never physical, but psychological. Former coach Paul Annacone has long maintained she has every physical gift required to command the women's tour. Her raw athleticism is otherworldly. Her ability to command the court is breathtaking. When her self-belief is firing, her serve becomes a devastating weapon. But that belief has been the missing piece. She has been performing with the fear of losing, not the hunger to win. She has been consumed by self-doubt, overanalyzing every move, and bearing the crushing weight of global expectations with every strike. But then came the shift. Those 12 words may have just been the key that unlocked it all. I am done seeking your approval. From now on, I play for me. That is not simply a line delivered to the press. That is a fundamental rewiring of her spirit. It is the permission she has granted herself to fail, to take risks, and to finally perform with unchained liberty. Some of the most breathtaking reigns in tennis history came from players who finally shed the need for anyone else's validation. Picture Serena Williams in her prime, an unstoppable force of nature who bulldozed her way through the competition with an almost ferocious self-assurance. Think of Rafael Nadal on the clay courts, so deeply immersed in his own world that the immense external pressure simply ceased to exist for him. That is the very incarnation of Coco Gauff we may be about to witness. The technical refinements have already been put in place. Her work with Brad Gilbert, one of the most brilliant tactical minds in tennis, was on full display during her triumphant 2023 US Open campaign. But flawless technique does not secure Grand Slam trophies. You must possess a warrior's mentality, an unshakable belief that you were born for these moments. And that very belief, that core of steel, may have just been forged in the fire of those 12 words. We could be watching the emergence of an entirely new competitor, one who does not cower under pressure because she has completely rewritten its definition for herself. The parallels to other young phenoms are, of course, impossible to ignore. We saw Emma Raducanu, who erupted onto the world stage with a breathtaking US Open win only to grapple with the immense fallout. We saw Naomi Osaka, a champion of 4 Grand Slams, who has spoken with immense courage about her own wars with mental health and the intense glare of the public eye. The critical distinction with Gauff is that she is meeting this storm head-on, out in the open, with the unwavering backing of one of the sport's most revered icons. This is no retreat, nor is it a moment of silence. It is a declaration of war, a line drawn that dares the world to step over. The atmosphere has shifted entirely, and we must now consider the commercial fallout from this dramatic stand. In the global arena, very few athletes possess the commercial magnetism that Coco Gauff currently commands. Her portfolio of endorsements boasts names like New Balance, Rolex, Bose, and Head. Their investment was never just about her performance on the court. They backed her undeniable authenticity, her profound connection with the public, and an immense digital following. The critical question now looms. Will this firestorm cripple her commercial appeal, or will it amplify it? The initial signs suggest an explosion in her value. Corporations are now desperately seeking ambassadors who embody a cause, individuals unafraid of their own reality, who forge bonds with a generation that values truth above perfection. Coco's singular act of rebellion may, paradoxically, become her most lucrative asset. We must also consider her new venture, Coco Gauff Enterprises, a project she initiated after departing from her team. That decision was a profound statement of her intent to seize absolute control over her narrative, her public image, and her financial destiny. For someone of her youth, it was a shockingly bold gambit, but in hindsight, the strategic genius of it is becoming crystal clear. She was methodically preparing for this exact confrontation, building a platform to be her own voice, to make her own rules without consulting managers who might value industry peace over her own protection. Those 12 words were anything but a spontaneous outburst. They were the culmination of months of calculated preparation, of forging the confidence and the alliances needed to finally articulate what had to be spoken. The resulting backlash, as one might expect, has been entirely predictable. Detractors have emerged, branding Coco as ungrateful, accusing her of attacking the very institution that built her, arguing that her fame and fortune exist only because of the media's glare. These arguments completely fail to grasp the heart of the matter. There is a vast ocean between media coverage and media persecution, between challenging journalism and outright character assassination. Coco is not demanding gentle interviews or endless adoration. She is asking for a baseline of human decency, for questions that dissect her game, not her soul. Such a request should be mundane, yet in the modern media circus, it has become a revolutionary act. What makes Federer's support so monumental is that he is an unimpeachable source. He is a figure you cannot possibly label a troublemaker or a whiner. This is a champion who battled through agonizing injuries without a word of excuse, who absorbed the pain of Grand Slam final losses with pure class, and who never once blamed the press for his trials. For a man like that to raise his voice changes everything. It confers a gravitas and legitimacy to Coco's fight in a way nothing else could have. It carries the weight of a king, validating a commoner's claim to the throne. It becomes impossible to dismiss her stand as immature rebellion or oversensitivity. The question now consuming everyone is, what comes next? What is the media's next move? What will the Women's Tennis Association decide? And how will Coco's own peers and rivals react? The Australian Open is on the horizon, and it's an absolute certainty that every press conference, every interview, and every player's gesture will be viewed through this new, contentious filter. Will the journalists sheath their swords and soften their approach? Or will they double down, proclaiming this a hostile assault on the freedom of the press? Will a new wave of athletes rise up with Coco, refusing to answer questions they deem out of bounds? We could be on the precipice of a fundamental reshaping of the athlete-media covenant. And this transformation is happening live before our eyes. There are historical precedents for a single moment altering the fabric of a sport. Recall the athletes who began taking a knee during the anthem, protesting deep-seated social injustices. The initial condemnation was deafening, but it unleashed a global conversation that permanently redefined our view of athlete activism. Remember the powerful chorus of female athletes who broke the silence on unequal pay and working conditions, igniting movements that yielded tangible, hard-won victories in sport after sport? Coco's 12 words might feel small on their own, but they could very well be the opening shot in a far greater war for respect, mental wellness, and the soul of young athletes. As for the architect of this storm, Coco herself, she has been a study in silence. Since uttering those 12 fateful words, there have been no follow-up statements, no social media explanations, no clarifications, just a deliberate, powerful stillness. And that quiet is deafening. It is the sound of absolute confidence. It is the echo of immense power. The necessary words were spoken. Now she is simply letting the declaration settle, allowing the world to argue, to rage, and hopefully, to think. And when she finally returns to the arena for her next match, the focus of the entire tennis world will be upon her like a laser. The world will be watching not just for her form, but to witness if this spiritual transformation translates into dominance. Can the action now match the audacity of the words? Can she transmute this fury, this glorious defiance, into the cold steel of a champion? The smart money is screaming yes. The archives of sport teach us that the greatest champions are often forged in the fires of disrespect, performing at their peak when they have a world to prove wrong. Michael Jordan famously turned every slight, whether real or imagined, into the personal fuel he used to utterly demolish his competition. The great Serena Williams often talked about how she harnessed her fury, turning the sting of criticism into raw power on the court. If Coco can somehow channel that same storm, converting all this chaos and public drama into the velocity of her serve and the precision of her forehand, we could be on the verge of witnessing greatness ignite. And in the heart of this firestorm, we cannot possibly overlook the towering presence of Roger Federer. He walked directly into the inferno, leveraging his immense influence and unimpeachable reputation to shield Coco, an act of astonishing courage. He put his meticulously crafted image as the sport's impartial statesman directly on the line. This move could have soured his connections with powerful media figures and tennis authorities, but it's obvious he reached a breaking point where silence was no longer an option. He chose to safeguard a rising star over preserving his own polished persona, which is the very essence of leadership. It is a masterclass in wielding status and influence for a noble cause, establishing a new benchmark for every other veteran in the sport. The message is clear. Your duty is to shield the future of the game, no matter the personal price. How the dynamic between Federer and Gauff evolves from here will be absolutely captivating. Even with their professional separation from Team 8, an undeniable and profound connection remains between them. Is it possible we're seeing the dawn of a new mentorship for Federer? Not as a coach in the traditional sense, but as a guide and a guardian Coco can turn to when the storm of pressure rages. The visual of these two, united against the entrenched powers of the tennis world, is an unforgettable and almost movie-like spectacle. It's a classic narrative, the veteran legend anointing his successor, but only after he has cleared the treacherous road ahead for her. This is a saga with themes that resonate far beyond the confines of a tennis court. Mark my words. We are witnesses to a pivotal chapter in sports history that will be analyzed for decades when chroniclers revisit the year 2026. Future generations will pinpoint this as the critical juncture, the exact instance the sport was compelled to reckon with its treatment of emerging talents. It was the instant a titan shattered his neutrality and a phenom unleashed her power. The moment a mere 12 words altered the entire landscape. This narrative extends far beyond the game itself. It's a commentary on our handling of youth in the spotlight and the heavy price of celebrity. It forces us to draw a line between constructive critique and outright malice, and it centers on one young woman who found the courage to declare her limit had been reached. So now, Beyond the Baseline family, we're turning to you. We need you to become a part of this vital dialogue. Did Federer make the right call by shattering his silence to challenge the press? Do you believe Coco's 12 words were the boldest statement you've ever witnessed? Or did she step over the line? And what are your thoughts on her labeling the fan base as the worst? Is she revealing a difficult reality we need to hear? Or is her judgment unjust? The floor is now open in the comments below. Let's ignite this debate, but let's maintain civility. The goal here is genuine discourse, not a barrage of cheap shots. If this saga has gripped you, and if you're determined to follow every twist of this evolving narrative, you already know the drill. Obliterate that like button, because it's the best way to amplify this message and ensure more people are exposed to this crucial story. Be sure to subscribe and activate your notifications so you won't be a step behind on any new information. Our team is meticulously covering this from every conceivable perspective. And the second Coco walks onto that court at the Australian Open, we'll be here, deconstructing every moment. Believe me, family, this is only the opening chapter. This entire affair has unstoppable momentum, and it is far from over. Until we meet again, amplify the conversation, stay authentic, and in the grand match of life, never let them break you. We will catch you in the next one. Peace out.